Education, the environment, AIDS, the economy, why young people don't vote. Governor Bill Clinton will be here to answer those questions and more next. Hi, I'm Tabitha Soren. This is Facing the Future with Bill Clinton, MTV's first presidential forum. Joining me here in Los Angeles is CNN's news anchor and host of Crier and Company, Catherine Crier. Hi, Catherine.
Hello, Tabitha. Hello, everyone. And of course, joining us is Arkansas Governor Bill Clinton. Governor, welcome.
Thank you, Catherine.
And Governor Clinton, for the next hour, will be answering questions from our audience of mostly 18 to 24-year-olds, a section of the population often overlooked by presidential candidates.
Since the New Hampshire primary in February, MTV News has been covering the election to encourage more young people to be politically active. The idea behind our Choose or Lose reports is if young people want change, then they must choose a candidate at the voting booth or lose out on a voice in the direction their country is going. Right now, Catherine has the first question from our audience.
All right, and I'd ask you to state your name, give us your age, and tell us what you do.
Governor Clinton, my name is Travis Zimmerman. I'm 23, and I work in electrical contracting. This weekend at the Rainbow Coalition, a speech was made by Sister Solja, in which she made a statement concerning the racial problems or the inner city violence. And I was wondering why you did not do research on her statements and what she's been saying, and when we are all going to stop pointing, when are you going to stop pointing your finger or anybody's finger across racial boundaries?
But I did do research. In two different statements over a 5-month period, she said, first of all, there were no good white people. She never met a decent white person. And then she said, why was there so much black-on-black crime? Why don't blacks take off a week and just kill white people? Now, those were quotes in the Washington Post. What I said was, I didn't really attack her. I said, you know, we don't have much time to pull this country back together. And here's a rap singer with a lot of influence on young people, a lot more influence than I have, who made these comments. And if you took the words white and black and reversed them, you might think David Duke made those comments, and you'd have a riot in the country. And what I said was, why don't we take a week and have nobody kill anybody? That's what I think we ought to do. I have worked my whole life to overcome racial division. And I don't think that people ought to be out there talking about it and promoting it. Now, if you say the quotes were wrong 5 months ago and last week, then somebody ought to say that. But that's not what was said. As a matter of fact, the Washington Post today once again reaffirmed the validity of its quotes.
Governor, one of the things that were highlighted in all of this was Jesse Jackson's continuing failure to endorse your candidacy as he sought out an apology for your remarks. How do you feel about that and the failure of the other Democratic candidates to yet endorse you, with the exception, I guess, of Senator Harkin?
Senator Harkin and Senator Kerry have. That's not the point. I bragged on the Rainbow Coalition, for example, when I was there, because they gave an award to the white person who filmed the Rodney King beating. And they gave an award to the 4 African Americans who pulled the white truck driver out of almost certain death. That's the kind of thing this country ought to be promoting. We ought to be bringing people together across racial lines so that we can work together.
All right, Governor, that's the most recent news about the governor, but let's find out a little more about the man who may be the next president. For those of you who may not know that much about Governor Clinton's background, we've prepared this report.
I'm Bill Clinton, and I think we deserve a change.
Bill Clinton was born William Jefferson Blythe IV to a widow in Hope, Arkansas 45 years ago. His mother remarried when Clinton was 7, and he took his stepfather's name. Overcoming poverty, Clinton worked his way through Georgetown University and on to Oxford, where he was a Rhodes Scholar. In 1973, he graduated from Yale Law School, where he met his future wife, Hillary Rodham. Clinton was a law professor before he became the Attorney General of Arkansas, and in 1979 he became the state's youngest governor at 32.
I believe that together we can make America great again. We can build a community of hope that will inspire the world. God bless you, and thank you very much.
Clinton is a politician, some say groomed to be the electable Democrat in 1992. The problem was the Southern governor didn't have much name recognition. The good news is now he has it. The bad news is how he got it.
When I was in England, I experimented with marijuana a time or two, and I didn't like it.
Yes, I was Bill Clinton's lover for 12 years.
People are having terrible economic problems, and yet more attention was given to a paid
tabloid story than any other event so far in this presidential election, not only that I've said, but that my worthy opponents have said.
So what issues does Bill Clinton want to pay attention to?
Under the guise of standing up for middle-class values, this country waged class warfare on the middle class and on the poor.
Clinton calls for a tax cut for those earning under $82,000 a year, while increasing taxes for those making more than $200,000.
Does that mean we should hurt the rich? Absolutely not. It means you should try to restructure this economy so people get rich the old-fashioned way by creating jobs and goods and services in America.
Clinton believes in a woman's right to choose. Yet he signed an Arkansas bill requiring parental notification for minors seeking abortions. Clinton is considered a latecomer to environmental issues, signing an Arkansas Conservation Act only last year.
We have a plant in Arkansas that's agreed to take 100% of the office waste paper and the newsprint for recycling in our state, and we're gathering it up.
Still, Arkansas is ranked 50th in the U.S. for overall environmental policy, according to last year's Green Index. Clinton is clear on several issues. He wants to require all employers to provide health insurance or tax those who don't for a public fund for the uninsured, and wants to cut defense spending by $100 billion over a 5-year period. And he strongly supports education assistance.
Any American could borrow the money to go to college with the assurance that they would pay it back as a small percentage of their income, so in accord with their ability to pay, or they could pay it all off in 2 years by doing 2 years of service to our country here at home as a teacher, a police officer, working in a drug program, or at some other needed public service area.
As of June 2nd, Clinton gathered a total of 2,430 delegates, enough to send him to the Democratic National Convention here in New York City's Madison Square Garden. As his party's challenger to President Bush, Governor Clinton now has a new set of considerations. For example, who will be his running mate? Speculators have suggested New Jersey Senator and basketball star Bill Bradley, as well as former Democratic presidential candidates Tom Harkin and Bob Kerrey. And then there's the Hillary factor. Has Mrs. Clinton's outspoken political persona helped the candidate?
Women who pack their children's lunch for school, who take the early bus to work, or stay out late for a PTA meeting, or spend every spare minute tending to their aging parents, do not need lectures from Washington about values.
And then there is the scene-stealing billionaire H. Ross Perot, who's threatening both the president and the governor in the polls. And for presidential candidate Bill Clinton, the real work is just beginning. Okay, is there anything else you'd like to know about Clinton's background?
Hello, Governor Clinton.
Hello.
My name's Gary Brown. I'm a senior student of political science at Loyola Marymount University in Los Angeles. I was wondering if you could tell us what you did when you were younger, our age, to help prepare you for a career in public service.
I did a number of things. First, I went to a school that gave me a good education. I went to Georgetown University in Washington at a time when there was a lot of turmoil and activity in Washington. From 64 through 68, that was the time when we were getting bogged down in Vietnam, time of great explosion in civil rights legislation and economic opportunity legislation for the poor, when it seemed that we were trying to make more progress at home, but getting in trouble in Vietnam abroad, and our country really began to be divided. But I was there, and it was great preparation for me. I worked in the United States Senate on the Foreign Relations Committee then. I also did some community service work when I was at Georgetown, and I worked in a number of elections. So my education, my off-hours work, and the elections I worked in all, I think, helped to prepare me to do what I'm doing today.
Catherine?
All right, Governor, we have another question over here.
Hi there, Governor Clinton. My name is Mary Louie, and I'm a 20-year-old economics junior at Long Beach State. And my question to you is, how did it feel like growing up in an alcoholic family? And I also understand that your brother was a drug addict.
My brother did get involved with first alcohol and then drugs, as many children of alcoholics do. His father and my stepfather was a good man in many ways, but he was an alcoholic and sometimes violent, and so it was occasionally difficult. But it was something that I learned first to live with, and then second to try to stop, and to be a peacemaker in my home, both forcibly and in non-forceful ways. And I suppose that in the years since then, that experience has had some effects on me which were both good and bad. The good news is I'm always trying to make things better, The bad news is sometimes I think I try too hard to make peace when you have to just cut it and recognize that conflict is inevitable.
Governor,
so I deal with that the best
Governor,
I can.
you mentioned something real quickly about being a peacemaker, and some of the things that I have read said that maybe that leads you to be a little too conciliatory, a little too quick to compromise.
Yes, there are people who say that, but I would make two responses. Number one, when I've had to stand up and be counted, I've done it. If you look at my record as governor, I was the first Southern governor ever to veto a bill passed by the National Rifle Association in my legislature. I did that twice. I made all my friends mad in education when I raised taxes for the schools, but also required teachers to take tests and required students to take more courses and schools to offer more courses, even when it was difficult for them to do that. I fought my friends in the business community to get a lobby control bill through my legislature, and they didn't pass it, so we took it to the people and they passed it. So over time, I've always been willing to fight when I had to fight powerful entrenched interests to change things. But in the end, in a democracy, the test of leadership is to make more than half the people agree with you. And if you look at it, in the last 10 years, we had really tough times at home, and we created manufacturing jobs at 10 times the national average. We improved our educational system, and we're nationally recognized for doing it. So I think being able to work with people as well as being able to stand up to interests, that both of those qualities are important in a president. If you have a president that can't stand up, the president will be too weak. If you have a president that can't work with people, the president will be ineffective. You need both to succeed.
Governor, we have a question over here about middle-class values.
Hi, Governor Clinton. My name is Jolene Kobasa, and I'm a graduate student in political science. And when you kicked off your campaign, you talked about middle-class values and a return to those, and also a call for personal responsibility. How does that differ from Dan Quayle's call for a return to family values?
Big difference. Good question, big difference. When I talk about middle-class values and a return to personal responsibility, here's what I mean. I think you ought to have the same future I did. When I was your age, I had no doubt that I and anybody in my generation who worked hard and played by the rules would be rewarded. That is, you could have a decent future, you could have a decent job, you could have your own children. At the time, we thought we had not only a lot of economic prosperity, but we thought we were coming together racially. Today, most people in America who work hard and play by the rules have their incomes going down. So I don't think they're being rewarded. The second point I want to make, and this is when Dan Quayle says this, he's not always wrong. There's only so much the government can do if people don't do their part. That is, in the absence of personal responsibility, nobody in government can give you anything that makes your life work. Now, what's the difference between that and what Quayle says? Quayle uses these themes to divide and distract us. So he says, for example, Murphy Brown's irresponsible and Mario Cuomo is a member of the cultural elite, right? He's up there attacking Mario Cuomo in New York. Mario Cuomo is the son of an Italian immigrant grocer. He graduated first in his class at St. John's Law School. He could not get a job on Wall Street because he didn't have the right cultural credentials, but he became the governor of one of the biggest states in this country because he was an American dream personified, not because he was part of some kind of elite. I'm worried about, I'll tell you what the difference is, I'm worried about all those families in Los Angeles whose children did not loot, did not burn, did not riot, stayed home, and they're still getting the shaft. Their future is not good.
Okay,
that's what politics ought to be about, and that's the difference between me and Quayle.
Governor, we're going to talk about the LA riots and some of the other trouble in a moment, but right now we got to take a quick break for a couple of commercials, but we'll be right back with Facing the Future with Bill Clinton right after this.
Thanks.
A lot of people, they need to really be, make it just their goal to really get out there and look at the issues, and really get out there and be serious about it, because, we're not going to be able to change anything in this world unless we're voting.
It's all right. Crack! Everything is just fine. Crack babies! There's nothing to worry about. Homelessness? It's okay. Racism, sexism, gun violence. It's all right. Welfare system. Everything is getting better every day. People living with rats. Everything is really cool. people dying of AIDS. There's nothing to worry about. Do you want me to say more?
MTV's Choose or Lose special, Facing the Future with Bill Clinton, is brought to you by Ford and your Ford dealer. Have you driven a Ford lately?
There's more than new looks to the '93 Ford Escort. There's a whole new way to buy an Escort, because these 4 Escort LXs all share one low price, $10,499. The 3-door, 4-door sedan, 5-door, and wagon all have air conditioning, AM/FM stereo, power steering, power mirrors, and more. 4 Escorts, one price. Now buying an Escort's as easy as owning one.
Have you driven a Ford lately?
I never seen nothing that color before.
Fantastic!
Nothing should taste that good.
All right. Those flavor crystals frighten me.
Whoosh.
Whoa! Wait! Did I say outstanding?
Cinnaburst Crunches? Not in this state.
Yes! Cinnaburst gum with flavor crystals. May not be suitable for adults.
Flight 735.
Open your coat, please. Take that thing out slowly and open it.
You got some kind of device. We have a possible situation.
No,
we have a situation here.
Not a situation. Just touch the button, sir. Quiet, please. It's just a car stereo.
Pioneer car stereos offer you a detachable face for the ultimate in security.
You see, it's a detachable face for the car stereo. What's the matter with these people?
The army of the future. Almost human. Almost perfect. Almost under control.
GR-13, ceasefire, ceasefire!
We're going after them. But the future has a bad attitude. From the studio that brought you Terminator 2 and Total Recall, Universal Soldier, rated R. Starts Friday, July 10th at a theater near you.
There's a hunger inside me, growing stronger every day.
Help satisfy that hunger with Snickers Ice Cream Bar. Fresh roasted peanuts, one-of-a-kind taste. It's satisfaction the way only Snickers can make it.
Great stride, kid.
Snickers Ice Cream Bar, official snack food sponsor of the 1992 U.S. Olympic team.
There's a hunger inside you.
Guess I'll be seeing you in '96.
That's me. Me again. Bullseye. Guess you could say I'm a magnet for stains. And each one meant money down the drain. Until I discovered new Ultra Dash.
New Ultra Dash packs an extra stain-fighting ingredient that can power out some of the toughest stains. But it doesn't cost a fortune.
Maybe I ought to tell them about Dash.
New Ultra Dash. It cleans a mess for less.
Welcome back to Facing the Future with Bill Clinton. And Governor, we have another question for you right here.
Hi, Governor.
Hi.
My name is Dominique, and I'm an illustration student at Art Center in Pasadena, and I would like to know, right now at this moment, I'm not sure if I'm going to vote for you, so I'd like to know why I should.
That is the question, isn't it?
Do you have any specific programs for younger voters?
I do. Let me make some general arguments, and then I'll give you one specific. First, I'm glad you're going to vote. You know, the 18 to 24-year-old voting percentage has been going down for 20 years. And you have a lot more on the line in this election than I do. You have a lot more of your life ahead of you than I do. So all of you should be in that. Here's why you ought to vote for me. First of all, because I really do care about what happens to you in your future. I've got a 12-year-old daughter is the most important thing in the world to me. And I know that unless we turn this country around, you're going to be part of the first generation of Americans to do worse than your parents. Secondly, you should vote for me because I've spent more than 10 years working on the things we now need a president to do. I've balanced budgets. I've helped to create jobs. I've educated people. I've worked to move people from welfare to work. I've worked to bring people together across racial lines. And the final reason you ought to vote for me is that of all the people running, I'm the only one who's really tried to systematically address all the major issues that are before us. I mean, I tell people, you know, what I would do if I got to be president. I've put out a plan. I've really said, you know, here's where I'm coming from, so that if you vote for me, you're not buying a pig in a poke, as we say down in Arkansas. You know where I'm coming from.
All right, Governor, we have another question along that line over here.
Yes, Governor, my name is Travis Caesar, and I'm 17, and I attend Crenshaw High School in Los Angeles. And I was wondering, why should the younger people of America trust the system?
You should trust the system because with all of its problems, and it has a lot of problems now, it is dominated by special interest and narrow concerns, and you have seen nothing but paralysis and denial of those problems. You should trust it because this is still the longest lasting democracy in the world. We've been around longer than anybody else because more than half the time the people did the right things and they elected leaders and they did the right things. So the system is not broken. It is in trouble. It needs a shakeup. We need somebody who will come in and shake it up and break the stranglehold of special interest. But look at the history of America. No other nation has ever done so much to promote freedom and democracy and independence and economic opportunity for its people. Never in all of human history. So with all of our problems, you ought to trust the system because it's better than the others that are around.
All right, Governor, we'll have more questions for Governor Clinton from our audience right after this.
And somebody just turned on me. He was driving a cab and he said, "You damn Arab, you foreigner, go home. What you doing here?" It hurts so much.
Guess Men, a cologne of raw sensuality. Voyager Sport Bag, his gift with Guess Men fragrance purchase at fine stores.
Introducing the epic challenge that only the Super Nintendo Entertainment System could make possible. Across endless land and water, you search. Deep into a parallel world where light becomes dark, you search. And just when you think your search has ended, you find it's just begun. The new Legend of Zelda, A Link to the Past. Now you're playing with power and superpower.
Clear your desks for a little pop quiz.
Brand new! Now Twix has chocolate fudge between the chocolate and that great cookie crunch.
Good news!
Chocolate fudge Twix, another one of life's great kicks. Twix.
I think they'll have shampoo there.
Might not have Head and Shoulders.
We're only going to be gone a week.
Right, a week. Head and Shoulders helps take care of the condition that causes flakes every day, because you never know. You know?
Head and Shoulders, because you never get a second chance to make a first impression.
Blockbuster Video has all the hot summer hits, more hot new releases, and more copies of them. Free Jack, House Party 2, The Butcher's Wife, Highlander 2, JFK, Father of the Bride, My Girl. We're turning up the heat with more movies than anyone in the world. Blockbuster Video's hot summer hits. Take them home and watch them tonight.
Now it's Shock and Sherbert.
Lungs Electronics is celebrating not one, not two, but 3 new store openings. Check out our gorgeous new stores and our super sale prices with 12 months same as cash. Camcorder sale for every occasion. Panasonic compact camcorder, $5.99. Sony 8mm camcorder with remote, $6.49. JVC compact VHS camcorder works great, even in low light, $6.99. 3 new Long stores, Hoover, Eastwood, and Tuscaloosa.
Since I got digital cable radio, I'm much more open to change.
On digital cable radio, you'll find 19 music channels, CD quality sound, and no commercials.
I found a whole new me.
It's cable for your stereo. Call your cable company.
If elected, I will be the president.
There are 70 million people in the U.S. aged 18 to 34.
I will be the president that stands for everything. Thank you.
Welcome back to Facing the Future with Bill Clinton. We all know the president has a plate full of problems, but we've been following the issues that young voters told us were most important to them: the economy, the environment, and education, to name but a few. Take a look.
The recession that we're in is probably got to be the main point that they got to run on. They got to see how they can come up with new jobs, because I know a lot of people are losing jobs who work for the city.
In fact, 25 million Americans were jobless at some point last year.
Pretty soon, you know, I figure my unemployment benefits are going to run out. I just can't wait around and lose a roof over my head, lose a vehicle. Yeah, it's not right.
I just got laid off myself after working 7.5 years for a company.
Jobs, has to be more jobs. It's going to come back to haunt us very soon, I think, if something doesn't get done.
A college diploma used to ensure employment, but the class of '92 faces a dismal job market.
Here I have a degree and I can't even find a job. I'm going for jobs that I'm overqualified for.
There are so many people who are graduating now who can't even use the degrees that they paid for. They still have to pay back all the loans that they were able to get.
I can't get loans at all. I can't get financial aid.
The good news is the 1993 budget calls for an increase in student aid. The bad news is we lead other industrialized nations when it comes to the homeless.
I don't ask people for nothing, because you say good morning to people out here, you know, they walk on by. They got everything on TV there, you know, help somebody in this country, you know, but yet they neglect, you know, that we're here. It's a raw deal.
We lead the world in death by handguns.
In America these days, it's as easy to buy a handgun as it is to buy a toothbrush.
5 years ago, the average person consumed 700 pounds of paper a year. But in 1992, 8 out of 10 people consider themselves environmentalists.
We are the world's largest consumer. We have resisted every effort to reduce our consumption, to recycle, to reuse, to use energy efficiency. We haven't even made the first major steps in this country to pull back our own consumption of goods.
And a dramatic change in the past 5 years, the Supreme Court nearly overturned Roe versus Wade, the case that ensures a woman's right to an abortion.
The ideal situation would be for Roe v. Wade to be overturned. I think once abortion is made illegal, once again, people will realize, there are a lot of people who don't realize what abortion entails.
I'm pro-choice, and I'm pro anyone who is pro-choice.
I think the healthcare issue is most important. I feel like foreign policy is extremely important.
For right now, everyone's just concerned more or less with themselves. It's the same old line, the same rhetoric. Nothing has changed. Nothing's new.
All right, Governor, let's get to questions on the issues.
Hello, Governor Clinton. My name is Jason Stensmulen. I'm a 23-year-old advertising major in Pasadena. And I think if Quayle considers me part of the cultural elite, then I'm proud to be his definition of that. I've got a question about the deficit, because bluntly, it really scares me a lot. And I don't think that most of the people in my age group, I haven't polled anybody here, but I don't think people take it seriously enough, especially in my age group. And part of the reason why I'm tending to support Perot right now is because it's his focus, and it seems like all his policy decisions, whatever they are, will emanate from the fact that he wants to deal with the deficit first and foremost. And it's like you don't decorate your apartment if you can't afford the rent. And I just want to know how you can convince someone that feels the way I do to vote for you based on your deficit policy.
Good question. Let me first of all tell you, I take this deficit issue very seriously. I've balanced 11 budgets in 11 years. And I've had to cut all kinds of spending. Just since I've been running for president, I've cut spending twice in my state since last October to keep spending in line with revenues. Here's what I would do to reduce the deficit. I would bring health costs in line with inflation. You will never, ever get the deficit down as long as health care costs go up at 2 and 3 times the rate of inflation. I would put a 3% reduction in administrative costs on every federal department. Strongly. I would reduce the number of federal employees by attrition, not by firing anybody, over the next 4 years. And I would eliminate some very specific and quite expensive elements in the defense budget. I would ask the Germans and the Japanese and others to pay more of their own way in our common defense. I would reduce the deficit. I also would process the way we deal with the S&L problems and the bank problems better, so we don't spend $100 billion a year on the S&L bailout after a couple of years. That's a big part of the deficit. Now, having said that, you made a great comment. You said, you don't decorate your apartment if you can't pay the bills. You need to understand that there is a big difference between some deficits and others. The biggest tragedy of this deficit is we have quadrupled the national debt in 12 years, but we have reduced the amount of money we're investing in your future. And here's the dilemma, and why I disagree with Mr. Perot on this a little bit. If we balance the budget as big as this deficit is in the next year or two, we'd have to raise taxes so much and cut spending so much that we'd never balance the budget, because we'd make the economy even worse. More people would be unemployed, more people would have less money, and therefore the tax receipts would drop off even more. Let me explain what I mean. We've really got an investment crisis in this country. We're not investing in jobs, in education, and health care. We're not taking all the money by which we're reducing defense and investing that money in building an economy for the 21st century. High-speed rail for California, modern waste recycling systems, modern water and sewer systems. Let me make it very personal to you. Almost everybody you know, every family represented here, has borrowed money at some time in the past. If you borrow money for a house, for a car, to start a small business, to replace outmoded plant and equipment in a manufacturing operation, that's a good way to borrow money. Why? Because you invest and it makes you richer. What we're doing now is borrowing money to decorate the apartment, borrowing money to go to dinner at night. Or in the farming states, we say borrowing money that's eating our seed corn. So what we need to do is to bring this deficit down in a very disciplined way, but at the same time we have to increase our investment in new jobs and in education, or we will never make the economy grow enough. It is the low rate of growth of this economy that is killing us. Japanese growing faster, Germans growing faster, a dozen other countries growing much faster than we are.
Governor, I've got another question over here about a very hot topic for young voters, abortion.
Hi, Governor Clinton. My name's Denise Monroe. I'm 25. I'm a stand-up comedian. Kind of similar career, I guess. I know that you passed a parental notification bill in Arkansas for teenagers that want to get an abortion. First of all, I'm completely opposed to that, as a lot of people are. And a lot of times, teenagers cannot talk to their parents. You cannot legislate communication. How can you support something like that?
You do say you're pro-choice.
Absolutely. Let's deal with it. I'm pro-choice. I would repeal the gag rule upon being president. I'm against what Operation Rescue is doing. And if the United States Supreme Court repeals Roe v. Wade, I'll do what I can to pass a federal law to protect the right to choose as much as I can. Why did I sign a parental notification bill? First of all, because it had a bypass provision, so that you could go with another adult and get permission not to tell your parents through a court system. Wow. And secondly, because we had evidence that abortions were being performed on girls at younger and younger and younger ages. And what I was concerned about is that no one was going to be there around with them to help them pick up the pieces. Now, I've now been engaged in it for a year, as you might imagine, in a discussion about parental notification with people like you who don't think it's a good idea. And don't think it's a good idea even to let the law take effect if you can go to a judge and get permission not to tell your parents. Because not every state has good judges. We have a lot of women judges in the counties where most of our abortions are performed who do a very good job at dealing with sensitive matters. But maybe what we ought to have is some assurance that children, particularly if they're under a certain age, have at least someone to whom they can talk and with whom they can relate after the procedure's over. What bothers me is if you have a 13 or a 14-year-old kid who's just sort of put out on the street and no one talks to the child a week after the procedure's over, who helps the kid pick up the pieces? That's what I'm concerned about. That is my only objective. I know you cannot mandate communication among parents. And we also, by the way, had absolute explicit requirements that if a parent had been abusive or if there was any problem or was absent from the home, you didn't have to do that.
But how are kids going to have access to the legal system? I mean, adults have enough trouble with it.
Oh, they have automatic access on this in an immediate way.
But are you saying...
But I think the real problem is whether the judges themselves are sensitive to all the considerations involved.
And teenagers...
We've got access to them. They do have access.
But are you saying what's good for Arkansas may not necessarily be good for the rest of the country? Are you saying you have revised your opinion on parental notification?
Well, first of all, I think it's largely a state law question. I don't think it's a national question. But what I'm saying is I have revised my opinion on parental notification to the extent that I think that if a parent is not involved, that some caregiver ought to be involved. If you're going to bypass the judicial system, there ought to be a school counselor, a religious counselor, a psychologist, someone who can help the child deal with the consequences of the aftermath. That's what my concern is, that, you know, when it's all over, protecting the right to choose for someone who's old enough to understand all the implications is one thing. Protecting the right to choose for a minor who couldn't get a tooth extracted without parental consent is a very different one. I mean, there are a lot of far more minor procedures that you can't have done in any hospital without parental consent. I'm opposed to parental consent, by the way. And I oppose a bill that would do that. I'm just looking for somebody that can help the children pick up the pieces and deal with either decision, the decision to have the child or the decision not to. That's what my goal is.
Speaking of helping children, we have another question over here.
My name is Gloria Blair. I'm 23 years old, and I work at the Canadian Consulate General in Los Angeles. Governor, my financial advisor tells me that I need to save $400 every month starting now in order to put my 4-year-old through college. Governor, what kind of hope can you give young parents such as myself and future parents as we try to plan ahead for our children's education?
First of all, under the present system, your financial advisor gave you good advice, but it's pretty hard to do, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Here's what I think we ought to do. I saw you clap when they showed the biofilm on this. We have got to make it easier for people to attend and to stay in college. In spite of all the job hunting problems college graduates have, the average college graduate in 1990 made 70% more than the average high school graduate in the first year of work. So it really matters whether you get an education. Here's what I would do. I would change the whole student loan system we have now. And I would set up a national trust fund out of which any American could borrow the money to go to college. No questions asked by income. Finance 4 years of college, even graduate school. But you would have to pay the money back in one of two ways, different from the way the student loan program works today. You'd either have to pay the money back as a small percentage of your income at tax time every year, so you couldn't beat the bill. Today we have $3 billion in loan defaults every year. But you'd have to pay based on how much you earn, so that if you became a school teacher, for example, with a lower income than a stockbroker, you'd be paying based on your ability to pay. The alternative is you could give 2 years of your life to a domestic Peace Corps. You could work at a very much reduced rate of pay for 2 years only in a needed area. You could be a teacher, a police officer, a nurse, work to help kids out of gangs and stay off drugs, do the things that would help solve the problems and bind up the wounds of America. And after 2 years, you wouldn't know anything. It'd be all over. We could educate a whole generation of Americans and use your energies to solve our problems. It'd be the best money we ever spent. And by the way, to go back to the deficit question, the program would never cost, by our calculations, more than $8.5 billion. That would be 6 years from now in a budget that's over $1 trillion. So it'd be a great investment in our future.
Okay, Governor.
And you'd never have to worry about your child getting an education.
Thank you.
Another question over here.
Governor Clinton, my name is Min, and I'm a 22-year-old gay film student at the Art Center in Pasadena. And my question for you is, if you become president, do you plan to revoke the U.S. military's longstanding ban on gay and lesbians who want to serve their country?
Yes. There is a Pentagon study now which says there is no reason for the ban. The military says that. Here's where I'm coming from on this issue. I believe we don't have a person to waste in America. We need all of you. I believe we're too divided today. So the presumption should be in favor of serving your country unless there's a reason not to allow it. That's the way I think about this. So the answer to your question is, based on the Pentagon's own study, yes.
If gay rights is an important issue to you, why is men having sex with men still illegal in Arkansas?
Because I'm only a governor, I'm not a legislator. To the best of my knowledge, that bill has never been enforced, and I'm not seriously whether it's constitutional.
Wouldn't you rather just get it off the books if it was really important
Absolutely.
to you?
And if you talk to the legislator who sponsored the repeal last year, he will tell you that I was sympathetic with him, supportive, and he couldn't get the bill out of the committee that it was in. So the sponsor of the bill, I think, will vouch for my credibility on that issue.
Okay.
All right, Governor.
Thank you.
Governor Clinton, my name is Jay Hewen. I'm a 23-year-old record company employee. My question is twofold. First of all, would you have signed the Earth Summit Treaty last week in Rio? Yes or no? And second of all, what policies specifically would you implement to make the United States a world leader on the environmental front?
Yes, I would have signed it. And yes, let me say what yes means. Yes, I would have signed the global warming treaty that the Europeans and the Asians wanted to limit the emission of greenhouse gases to 1990 levels by the year 2000. The United States took the lead in gutting that. Yes, I would have signed the biodiversity treaty, but I would have signed it with reservations. Countries can do that to protect our biotechnology industry here at home. There were some serious intellectual property rights issues there that could affect a lot of high-wage, high-tech, and environmentally responsible jobs here at home. But that would have been fine, and they wanted us to sign it with reservations. So yes, I would do that. Specifically, I think here's what we need to do with the environment. Number one, have a new energy policy. You don't get a good environment without a new energy policy. Get off of cheap oil onto more domestic natural gas, which is cleaner, cheap, and abundant, onto solar energy and other forms of renewable energy, and onto international standards of energy conservation. Number two, have a national effort to recycle more solid waste and reduce the volume that we produce. Number three, install modern systems of protection against water pollution and air pollution and new modern sewer systems in this country. We could put millions of people to work. There have been real trade-offs to be made over time between the environment and the economy. Now, with the end of the Cold War, we have this huge scientific and manufacturing base out there waiting to find something new to do. We can actually create millions of jobs in cleaning up the environment. So you can now be pro-growth and pro-environment. There is not an intrinsic conflict. The Germans know it, the Japanese know it. They ate our lunch at Rio, and they already have 70% of the American market for pollution cleanup equipment. It is wrong, and we ought to change our policy.
Governor, what about the policies in Arkansas? Arkansas still ranks essentially 50th in the 50 states, and in fact, there's been
the Green Index is full of bull. It's a joke, and every environmental analyst in our state who's looked at it has admitted that it is wrong.
But in looking at your record, in the first term, there was much support for opposing clear cutting of timber, opposing various business activities, and yet when you were reelected, they seem to be those industries, in fact, supporting your election efforts, and the fight against environmental trouble has diminished.
They have sometimes. That's not true. We doubled environmental fines in 88 over 87, doubled them in 89, doubled them in 90, increased them again in 91. There are more rivers you can fish in and more rivers you can swim in today than there were when I became governor. We were one of the first 4 states in America to comply with the Community Safe Drinking Water Act, one of only 4 states in America where the air quality is regularly in full compliance with the EPA standards. That we have some tough environmental problems at home associated with the fact that we historically have a chemical industry and a heavy agricultural industry, and the EPA nationally has never regulated water pollution by agriculture. Yes, we do, but we're making progress on them. And if you look at the real record in Arkansas, the environment's in better shape today than it was when I took office. There have been some tough decisions, but like I said, today, if you had a national policy of environmental cleanup, you wouldn't have these states pitting themselves against one another. You wouldn't have industry threatening to move to state X if state Y cleans up its waters more. That what we need is a strong national environmental policy that will make it possible for the governors in every state to hook into a program to create jobs and clean up the environment at the same time.
Okay, Governor, I have someone here who would like to ask you about health care.
Hi, my name is Michael Heath. I'm a 25-year-old poli-sci major at Cal State Northridge. Myself and probably a lot of students here don't have health care, so I figure it's an important issue. You've been quoted as saying that you would take on the AMA, the pharmaceutical companies, and cut the bureaucracy involved and create a universal health care within a year for citizens of the United States in a year if you were elected. I don't think that's possible. So beyond the rhetoric, give us some specifics that we can actually say that are tangibles that you're going to do.
I think it is possible. I think it's a good example of how weak our political system has become, that you don't think it is possible, because every advanced country in the world besides the United States has a system that provides a basic package of affordable health care to all its citizens. We're out there all by ourselves. We're spending 30% more of our income on health care than any other nation and doing less with it. What are the big problems? The big problems are the insurance companies take too much money for administration and profit because we have more of them than anybody else. And the government does nothing to control the overall cost of health care, and instead has permitted us to raise, this is an amazing figure, but increase the growth of bureaucracy in hospitals and doctors' offices by 4 times as much as the growth of health care givers are going. That's literally true. Clerical workers in hospitals are growing by 4 times the rate that nurses are. So what are we going to do? We need a simple plan that requires sacrifice from the people that are spending money unrelated to health care. You need a basic package of affordable health care that is either offered through employers to their employees or by the government to small business people, self-employed people, and uninsured people. People should pay based on their ability to pay, but that basic package will be there. And you should pay for it by mandating insurance reforms, slashing bureaucracy, and simplifying the way that people access the healthcare system so that you take those savings and lower insurance costs for people that now have insurance, and at least lower the burden of those who will have to pay something who aren't paying anything now. In other words, we have to do what these other countries have done. This is not rocket science. It is difficult. I don't want to deny that it will be difficult to pass, but it definitely can be done if I win this election based on a promise to do it. That's what you have elections for. Congress is out there. They'll have pressures from special interests. You're right. But they're going to watch this election just like you're going to vote in it. And if, especially with all these incumbents being defeated this year, if the American people vote for a person running for president that says, I'm going to join the ranks of the rest of the world and give you affordable health care, you believe me, the Congress will pass it, and they'll pass it in the first year.
Right, Governor, let's get another quick question right over here.
Hello, Governor Clinton. My name is Sandra Bakes, and I'm 20 years old. I'm majoring in broadcast journalism, and my question for you today is, how are you going to provide a program and training for people that only have a high school diploma to make them feel like they're contributing to society and they actually mean something?
Unfortunately, if we can get a quick answer.
Quick question. It's just like health care. We're the only advanced country that doesn't give further training to high school graduates. I want a national system of apprenticeships. You graduate from high school, you don't want to go to college, you get 2 years of guaranteed training through a partnership in every state between employers, the government, and the education system. 2 years of further training will guarantee people a job with a growing income instead of a shrinking income, restoring the dignity to blue-collar work. Real important for this economy.
All right, Facing the Future with Bill Clinton will continue right after this.
How are we doing? Pretty good? Good question.
MTV's Choose or Lose special, Facing the Future with Bill Clinton, is brought to you by Ford and your Ford dealer. Have you driven a Ford lately?
Ask anyone who's driven a Ford lately. Like the people from Car and Driver, who've named Taurus SHO one of their 10 best. The people from Motor Trend, who named Explorer the best buy in its class. Or any one of the thousands of people who've made Escort the best-selling small car in America. Have you driven a Ford lately? It's more than just a question. It's an answer.
Before Foot Locker decided to premiere Reebok's new preseason shoes, we took them out for a spin, for a drive, and for a fly. We found the extra traction sole was perfect for short stops, fast starts, even hugging curves. So head to Foot Locker and shift into preseason at record speed, because before you know it, the season will be upon you. Reebok's new preseason shoes premiering at Foot Locker, where it all begins.
Michael, is everything all right?
Somebody in the house. Call the police.
What?
Call the police.
They called a cop.
I'm gonna make sure that your block's patrolled all night long.
Now, they can't get rid of him.
Well, I got a cop who wants me out of the way because he wants my wife.
I know I shouldn't be here.
How do I get a cop off my back?
You listen to me. You stay away from her.
Michael! Stay here and lock the door.
Unlawful entry. Rated R. Special sneak preview Saturday night. Check newspapers.
This is a chunk of super soft bubble yum bubble gum. This is an electrosonic disco phonic strobe light. Both light up the fun, but only the yum won't burn out. Long lasting mucho blasting bubble yum keeps it popping.
Lungs Electronics 3 grand openings. Panasonic 25-inch remote TV, $349. Lungs new stores, Hoover, Eastwood, Tuscaloosa. Lungs Electronics 3 grand openings. Complete Sony system with remote, $279. Lungs new stores, Hoover, Eastwood, and Tuscaloosa. Only Lungs Electronics passes the sound driving test.
You win!
With a JVC car stereo, lowest price ever, just $99.
Digital cable radio is
a three-dimensional high-resolution sonic photo of the musical performance.
Huh?
It sounds just like a compact disc.
The reflected beam is received by a light sensor.
It sounds just like a compact disc.
It has incredibly low levels of noise and distortion.
It sounds just like a compact disc.
Digital cable radio, 19 music channels, no commercials, and it sounds just like a compact disc.
It's cable for your stereo.
Call your cable company.
Welcome back to Facing the Future with Bill Clinton. Governor, we have another question for you.
Hi, my name is Michael Landsman. I'm 24, and I'm on staff at AIDS Project Los Angeles. I'm also HIV positive, and that's probably because I didn't know anything about safer sex in high school. I'd like to know how you feel about AIDS information and, more importantly, condoms being made available to America's junior and senior high school students without parental consent.
I support strong sex education programs in the schools, and I'll tell you what my position is based on my record. I have fought hard for the right of local school districts to have sex education programs, which included condom distribution programs. If the local community people would support it, I would support it, and that's what we've done. Our state has been on the forefront of that battle, and believe me, it's been a tough battle. In the last legislative session, the people who were opposed to our sex education programs and opposed to all condom distributions almost killed the budget of the health department. But I strongly believe that this is a life and death matter. I think it's important to reduce the rate of unwanted pregnancy, which is the best way to reduce the abortion rate. But it's life or death when it comes to AIDS, and without parental consent. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. While lawmakers are arguing about morality and deciding on whether or not we're going to let our children have these condoms, teen pregnancy rates are skyrocketing and HIV is spreading, and I don't have the time. You know, people are dying. I've got the virus, and I can't wait anymore. I wish people would do something now.
I believe there has been an enormous explosion in this country in sexually transmitted diseases in the last few years. And here's a case where there is a limit to what the government can do unless we can also change people's behavior. I mean, there has been a breathtaking explosion, and we know that there are certain things which work to prevent it. And I believe abstinence is best too, but I also believe people should have a right to stay alive and keep themselves alive. And I think, and you can't get these kids anywhere else but in the schools, a lot of them. I mean, where else do we find all the children at the appropriate time, at the appropriate age group? So I'm strongly in favor of it.
We're going to get to what the president can actually do in a moment, but first, Catherine has another question.
All right, Governor, right here.
Hello, Governor Clinton. My name's Amanda Marks. I'm 25 and aspiring screenwriter. And my question is, how do you and Hillary feel about the harsh, almost backlash-like response she has received? And second part, what can you do as a leader to convince people feminism is not a dirty word?
Well, obviously, when my wife is criticized, I don't like it. You know? I mean, obviously, I don't like it.
Her. I mean,
she is a remarkable human being. And what happened with this tea and cookies remark mystified me. What she was defending was her right to work and be married to me while I'm governor and be first lady of our state. And the way it was spun out there was like she was making an attack on women who stayed at home, which she would never do. I mean, I am the product of a working mother and a working grandmother. Her mother stayed at home and raised her, and obviously I think did a magnificent job. But my wife has done more work on behalf of children and families than any spouse of anybody who ever ran for president, ever. I mean, for 20 years, her first job was with the Children's Defense Fund. She was the board chairman of that. She worked on the Child Care Action Campaign, is still on that board. I mean, she has killed herself for 2 decades on her own, not only to inform me and make me more sensitive to issues affecting young children like child care and medical care and preschool programs, but also to make an impact. And I think the American people ought to be proud to have somebody like that living in the White House. And I really don't. The real thing that's frustrating to me is the voters are now voting for women in greater numbers than ever before. You nominated 2 women for the Senate. I don't see why she should be. Yeah, you could clap for yourself. Good. I don't see why my wife should, check her lifetime of work and experience and her intelligence and her passion and compassion at the front door, just if I get elected president.
So you're saying in terms of working or active involvement in those areas, you would expect that to continue then?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think she wants to work for a living if I become president because she cares about the same thing I do. She would like to pour her energies into helping children. She doesn't necessarily want a particular job. She'd like to be given a big problem in America and figure out how to mobilize resources and solve it, not just have a job in the government. That's not, but it really has concerned me that people don't see this as an incredible resource. I mean, I don't think that makes me weaker because I'm married to a real smart woman who's done a lot of things. I mean, I think it ought to make me a more attractive person to be president, that someone like that would also be living in the White House, talking about the interest of our children, trying to be an advocate for giving America a real family policy for the first time in its history. I think it's a big plus.
It sounds like we'd be getting 2 presidents for the price of 1 if you were elected.
Well, you can't say that now because it makes people nervous, but at home, voters often say to me, we got 2 for the price of 1, and they like it. I mean, the people that know my wife always thought that, one of the best things about me was that we were there together.
We have another question for you right here.
Hello, Governor. My name is Dennis Schloss. I'm 20 years old, and I just want to know what kind of programs would you institute or fund to rebuild South Central and bring jobs to the surrounding communities? Definitely for minorities, actually.
First, I hate to sound like a broken record, but let me be a broken record. You got a crisis of investment, not enough money being invested to put people to work. 2 kinds, and there's money that people have, private citizens have, and money that the government has from taxes, right? Mm-hmm. California is hurting and South Central LA is hurting because we have not taken all the money from these defense cuts, which have led to big layoffs in your state, and invested it into building an economy for the 21st century. Why shouldn't we be making a high-speed rail network in South Central LA? Why shouldn't we be putting people to work rebuilding our streets and our airports and our water systems and our sewer systems? In other words, I would have a big program that would provide jobs for people by investing in the things that will make us all richer. Secondly, I would change the system of incentives to give people more incentives to put their private money into South Central LA. Most new jobs are created in this economy by small business. 85% in units of under 50 jobs each. That's where the jobs are. Most people, let me just tell you a little history. I don't want to get too long, but a little history. South Central LA or Southern California is full of people from Arkansas who left, white and black, who left Arkansas because it was a poor state, people couldn't make a living on the farm anymore, and they came out here. What did they do when they came here? They got factory jobs, okay? You get a factory job, makes you a middle-class citizen. health insurance, retirement, vacations, send your kid to college, afford a house payment. Factory jobs go away. What replaced them? Small business jobs. How do you get in small business? You get a bank loan. There's no system that guarantees that. So I would give you a banking system where we'd have banks set up to make loans in areas like South Central LA where people are making their deposits in those banks. We need to make small business loans, put people back to work, and I'd give special incentives to do it. And then obviously I would have a lot of crash education and training programs so that people would be prepared for the jobs we create. But the first thing you got to do, invest in those communities. Put some money in there, put people to work, then educate and train them to do the jobs.
We saw you walking around the riot-torn area of LA, and since the beginning of your campaign, you have talked about commonality between people, racial harmony, and it seems to be an important issue with you. But why then, after as many years being governor as you have been, why have you not gotten a Civil Rights Act through your legislature?
Because I want to pass one that's tough to pass. That is, let me explain what I mean. Most state civil rights laws allow you to bring an action in a state court under the federal law. That is, most state civil rights laws say, we're going to give you the state courts as well as the federal courts to enforce your rights under the federal law. I want a law which covers things which the national law doesn't cover, which provides more protection to women, which provides more protection for small business, which sets up some things which are quite controversial. And the sponsors of the last civil rights bill and I decided that rather than pass a bill which didn't mean anything, just to say we had one on the books, we'd set up a special task force and try again in 1993 to pass a really tough civil rights law. It's not easy. You know, governors and presidents aren't dictators. I've gotten over 90% of what I've asked for from my legislature, but you don't get them all, and that's really tough. I was trying to do something that a lot of bigger states with a better climate have not been able to do.
Governor, if we could return to the issue of unemployment and jobs back here.
Hello, Governor. My name is Amy Miller. I'm 24 years old and I'm currently unemployed. I'd like to know what you can do for those of us in my generation who are...
Did you have?
I mean, I'm in the television entertainment industry and I've been laid off and I can't find any work within the field.
Anybody, someone like you who's having problems, you're largely a victim of this recession. The last 3 years have been the slowest period of economic growth since before World War II. It's almost impossible to believe. Literally since before I was born, these have been the 3 slowest years. So what I can do for you is to get this economy going again. A lot of jobs would be created which you could get if we began to invest in our people and our economy again. For the last 12 years, our economic theory has been keep taxes low on rich people and corporations, and they'll take care of it. It doesn't work. We got to create jobs the way other successful countries do. I will invest in this country in ways that will create millions of new jobs, and I want to change the tax system to give people who have money more incentives to create new jobs for themselves, but no more tax incentives to shut our businesses down and move them overseas. Today we have too many incentives to move jobs away from America, too few incentives to keep jobs in America. That's what I'll do.
All right, Governor, we'll get back to our questions in just a moment, but first let's take a look at what the president actually has the power to do in the White House, and let's see if what he can really do with the limitations regardless of the promises he makes along the campaign trail.
The purpose of politics is to enable every person in this country to live up to his or her God-given abilities. We're a long way from that now because of national neglect.
Read my lips.
And I would not compromise or sell out or make deals with anybody for anything.
Campaign promises aside, what can one person really accomplish if elected President of the United States? Among presidential powers outlined in the Constitution, the president can grant pardons, sign treaties with foreign countries, and appoint justices on the federal level. Clearly, there's more to being president than what's written in black and white.
So much of what a president does is symbolic. Speak out about the issue with a sense of commitment and passion that seems genuine to people, not just contrived and phony. The president decided this is an issue I care deeply about. A lot would change.
But when it comes to an issue like AIDS, the president obviously can't develop a cure. What then?
He could speak out more publicly about AIDS. He could send up legislation to the Hill that asked for more funding for AIDS.
Until such time as enough Americans get angry enough and say, access to proper health care is my right, and I demand it, and I demand of my elected officials that you come up with solutions to this problem, it's not going to happen here.
Things can happen when the president proposes, resists, or interprets policy. He must then rally party support for his plan, navigate it through Congress, and the end result is what is known as politics.
Corporations now act like political organizations. They finance candidates, they develop policy positions, they propagandize the public. This country can't be run by 100 corporations. Democracy doesn't work that way.
But big business and special interest groups can exert influence, and the Congress can overturn a president's veto. But the president can reinterpret laws and appoint lawmakers to uphold his views.
That the president at bottom only has one power, and that's the power to persuade. He's got to be able to take a message and convince other people to come along in the direction that he wants to go.
All right, Governor, the powers of the presidency. Would you like to respond to the piece?
Let's use the AIDS example because that was on the film. Harry Truman once said that a lot of his job as president was trying to get people to do what they ought to do anyway without his having to ask. But he also meant in Congress. Let's look at the AIDS issue. What can the president do? Number one, he can make it a high national priority. This president doesn't talk about AIDS very much. I have promised that I'll have an HIV-positive person speak at the Democratic National Convention. I want to put somebody in charge of the AIDS battle so we cut across all the bureaucratic red tape. You can do those things. You can lift the visibility of an issue. Number two, you can act. We can fully fund the Ryan White Health Act to treat people with AIDS and to do more research and development. You can broaden the research. We don't do near enough research on AIDS as it affects women and minorities. Number three, you can appoint commissions, but then you got to do what they say. Magic Johnson's on the AIDS Commission, which has issued 2 great reports, but nobody's implementing the reports. I would do that. So if you look at the AIDS issue, you see here's the president, number one, using the power to raise an issue in the national consciousness. Advocate sex education in the schools, things like that. Number two, pass bills in Congress. Number three, take administrative actions that you can take even if Congress doesn't do anything by implementing those recommendations.
All right, well, let's take another question.
Hi, Governor. My name is Kate Deere, and I'm a 21-year-old student studying communications at Cal State Northridge. And my question to you is, former Governor Jerry Brown took steps to bring politics back to the people by limiting his campaign contributions to $100 per person, getting away from the Republican elitist mega money system. How will you take steps to bring the politics back to every single person in this country?
I want to do 2 things. First of all, I want to have real reform to reduce the influence of special interests in elections. In congressional elections and in presidential elections, I want to eliminate the influence of PACs. I want to say a political action committee can't give more than a person can. And I want to say in races for Congress, we're going to limit spending. And we're going to require TV and radio stations to open their airwaves to honest debates or to forums like this, so that television can become an instrument of education, not just a weapon to assassinate your opponent. So I think that is very important. The second thing I want to do is to do more of what I have been doing lately and what Governor Brown did too. Use technology to empower citizens. Last Friday night, I did a 30-minute town hall meeting in Pittsburgh, and I ran an 800 number under it, and I said, if you have a question, or if you want a copy of my plan, or you want me to respond to something, call us. Well over 100,000 people did. So I'm trying to use technology, like we're doing today, to be more accessible to people, to empower the voters, and less to put a distance between me and the voters.
Governor, we have another question about fundraising.
My name is Scott Hendrickson. I'm 22. I'm a photographer. My question is about, and also would you specifically talk about who your special interest groups are, who's behind you, who's going to be knocking on the door at the White House when you...
Well, I have received a broad base of support. I've gotten support from thousands of people, 20,000 people in my own state alone.
Are there any major business corporations?
Well, I've received, it's interesting, I've received support from almost all the major business interests in my state because they think I've been a pro-business governor. We created manufacturing jobs at 10 times the national average, but I did it after I told them, if you vote for me, I'm going to raise taxes on people with incomes above $200,000 a year and make the wealthy pay their fair share again. I have received support from some people in health care, but almost always, virtually without exception, they were people who believed, like I did, that we had to have national health insurance. So I've received support from people on Wall Street, but only after I made it clear to them that I expected Wall Street to help us build an economy out of people and products and not out of perks and paper and fancy financial deals in the 1990s. So I have received a broad base of financial support, but only after I made it clear that everybody knew exactly where I was coming from so that they knew if they were contributing to me, I was going to keep the commitments I made in the campaign.
So do you or don't you accept PAC money?
I do not. I don't, not all PACs are bad. Like the nurses can't afford to give $1,000 individually, so maybe nurses can get together and make contributions as a PAC, but PACs should not be able to give more than people. I would take PAC money, I think, if PACs could give no more than a person can. But a PAC can give $5,000, and you can load your campaign up with PAC contributions so much that, you know, all these interest groups think that you're beholden to them, and I think it's a real mistake.
Okay, we have to take another break right now for a couple of commercials, but we'll be right back with more questions from our audience for Governor Bill Clinton.
Coffee spill. How are you going to clean it up? Paper towel? Think twice. At the rate Americans spill coffee, we need a forest of paper towels to clean up the mess. It takes wood chips to make paper towels. Wood that comes from trees. Trees that provide shade for humans, homes for squirrels, and oxygen for everyone. Without trees, breathing could become very difficult. Use a rag.
Come on! Come on, come on, come on, come on, come on. Come on, let me show you where it's at. Come on, come on, come on, come on, come on. Come on, let me show you where it's at. Come on.
Real beer refreshment that's less filling. Miller Lite's everything you want a beer to be.
Cold Miller Lite, I like it like that.
Tomorrow, cash machines.
Come on, Miller Lite, it's in that side. Come on.
It's Barcelona. Clock's ticking down. He brings the ball up. Drexler's open on the wing. Great pass from Malone. USA needs a basket to win. Magic goes to the hoop. Yeah!
When USA Basketball plays for the dream, they'll wear the uniform champion proudly earned the right to make. It takes a little more to make a champion.
This is a Ghost Board from Long John Silver's. The hottest new, totally portable, fully accessorized, mega huge, way cool multi-beverage container with flip-top lid and high-tech robo-straw. Boost. Available in 4 excellent designs and is the extreme ultimate summertime sports accessory. Just 99 cents with any Long John's meal. But beware of imitations. Some are Ghost Sports from Long John's, and some are not.
Go fish! Long John Silver!
Go for the $1.99 shrimp and chicken combo. And don't forget to add a piece.
News alert. Someone is stealing Gotham City's power supply. Danger of citywide blackout.
When you want a Diet Coke, you want a Diet Coke. After all, there's just one. Diet Coke. Just for the taste.
Introducing the epic challenge that only the Super Nintendo Entertainment System could make possible. Across endless land and water, you search. where light becomes dark, you search. And just when you think your search has ended, you find it's just begun. The new Legend of Zelda, A Link to the Past. Now you're playing with power, superpower.
Welcome back to Facing the Future with Bill Clinton. Imagine this. In the 1988 presidential election, fewer than 50% of the eligible 18 to 24-year-olds even bothered to vote. Why is this segment of the American population choosing to opt out of the political process? Here's more.
But I'm not really into politics, so I'm kind of apathetic.
I don't think that the young voters are apathetic. I think that nobody showed them any attention.
Since 1972, each election has drawn fewer 18 to 24-year-old voters. This age group is perceived as apathetic and cynical about politics. Political writer Jonathan Cohn examined this trend.
Almost every generation of Americans alive today, except ours, at least at one time in their life, particularly when they were young, had an inspiring leader or a government that actually was a very active force.
Government programs by presidents like Franklin Roosevelt and John F. Kennedy reinforced the connection between government and people's everyday lives. But the 18 to 24-year-olds of today did not have those experiences. Studies show that because of these historical circumstances, young voters never thought that government would be a positive force in their lives. So why bother voting? Their first vague memory of a president was Nixon.
I have never been a quitter.
Richard Nixon and his Watergate scandal not only tainted the presidency, but government as a whole.
I said, "Mom, who's that?" And she said, "Oh, that's Tricky Dick. He's bad." And kind of stuck. That was my sort of first memory in politics. The president was corrupt, the government was corrupt, and sort of the first of many disillusionments.
Gerald Ford is often remembered for his clumsiness instead of his policies. Some saw Jimmy Carter as a weak leader who was bullied by Iranian revolutionaries.
I remember hearing about Jimmy Carter and his brother being a drunk and all the peanut stuff.
Ronald Reagan told voters he would make everything better, but his distrust of big government and scandals within his administration reinforced young voters' already built-in cynicism.
I guess the first major impressions would be when Ronald Reagan came into office, and we were so glad somebody's going to get something done for once.
Get off my back!
Another factor that has distanced young voters from the White House is age. Kennedy connected deeply with youth in part because he too was young, but every president since Kennedy has become older.
So the presidents have gotten older and older and older, and thus further away from young people.
The fact that government is mostly made up of old white males is another problem.
The makeup of the government seems so inconsistent with the makeup of the society they've been taught to expect, and particularly for young people who are minorities. Little wonder you have a sense it's not for you, it doesn't do anything for you.
And parents have also had an impact on their children's voting habits. A lot of parents became extremely cynical about politics after Watergate and passed that on to their children.
Young people particularly just have a different kind of cynicism that comes from having never seen government work. And the fact that their parents are cynical because they used to see government work and now it doesn't help them.
Unfortunately, I don't think my parents ever stressed me that I should vote.
I think people sense this is an important election year, and they do sense it always. It's a very crucial time. I think what happened in Los Angeles actually heightened their awareness of that. I think the question is whether or not people are going to connect that with the ballot box.
Governor, a big problem with an awful lot of voters. What do you think?
I understand how people feel that way, but, you know, I was looking at this film feeling so sad because when I was your age and even younger, my presidential models were President Roosevelt, who won World War II and brought the country out of the Depression, and John Kennedy, who made people like me feel like we really made a difference again. And even when things started to go wrong with this country in the 1960s, when so many of us were protesting the Vietnam War or wanting the racial problems to go away, we believed that politics was something that was good, that it was noble to be involved in public service, that things like the Peace Corps, which Kennedy started, made you a better person. And, you know, if nothing else comes out of this campaign, I hope that I can convince millions of Americans that they can make a difference. I mean, I'll say again, we've been here for 200 years, and if this was a bad system, we'd be history. We'd be gone by now. But we need the energies of young people. That's why I love this national service program I proposed. I agree that a lot of the things that Kennedy proposed connected people my age to the government. We've been told the government's lousy and can't do anything right and is awful for so long. that no one believes we can make it work, and there's nothing to connect you to it. Youth service is one way we can do that.
All right, Governor, we have time for a quick question on this.
Yeah, my name is Forrest Wright, and I'm 22. I just graduated from UCLA. And my question is, it's really great that you're here today talking to us, and you're in touch with us. But as president, how do you plan to stay in touch with us? And I mean, would you be as willing to go back on MTV while you're president and do an interview as you would be doing your State of the Union address?
I'll do that. I'll come back on MTV as president. And let me say, I think one advantage I've had in believing that you can make government work is that I come from a fairly small state. So I can go out to, everybody calls me by my first name, and we go to these little town meetings, and people pour out their heart, and if they're mad at me, they tell me, and we have a real relationship.
But how does that translate nationwide?
Well, I think what you have to do is do more things like this, and do them on television so people can see it's unrehearsed, unscripted, nobody told you what the questions were going to be, it's not some put-up deal, and you're really being accountable. I think that I should continue that as president over and over and over again.
Governor,
I've actually paid to have meetings like this where I pay a firm to go in and get undecided voters to come in so no one would ever think they were for me to ask questions. So I'll keep doing that, and I'll come back to MTV as president.
And more on Facing the Future with Bill Clinton right after this.
Well, we'll get him next time.
The Dow Industrial was up 2 points of 2%. The bullish stock market of Wall Street 3% down over... Make your mark.
Once, my mother and I went to lunch. When I opened my purse to pretend like I might pay the check, a roll of certs tumbled out. "Who is he?" she asked. I said, "Mother. I don't have to be romantically involved with a man to use certs. I just want fresh, clean breath." "Good," she said. "He didn't look right for you anyway."
Want fresh, clean breath? Get the only mint with Retsin. And be certain with certs.
Kelly LeBrock reveals the essence of man.
It's in the way he walks, the way he smiles, and when he holds you close. It's in the way he smells. Brute, the essence of man. Come on, put it on.
Who says girls can't play baseball? This summer, the Rockford Peaches are in full swing. Gotcha! And the national pastime may never be the same.
What if at a key moment in the game, oops, my bosoms come flying out?
That sounded good.
Tom Hanks, Gina Davis, Madonna. A League of Their Own. Directed by Penny Marshall. Rated PG.
Hey, who's the manager? I am!
Season starts July 1st in theaters everywhere.
This is a chunk of super soft bubble yum bubblegum. And this is 305-pound sumo wrestler. Both are big, but the yum never falls flat. Whoa. Long-lasting, big blasting bubble yum. Keeps it popping.
The School of Hard Knocks. History. The heavyweight champ for 7 straight years was Larry Holmes. Anatomy. The Holmes hammer. The most devastating jab in boxing. Mathematics. Evander Holyfield. Biceps 17 inches. Reach 77 inches. Career wins 27-22 by knockout.
School's in session. You got a lot to learn.
Live from Caesar's Palace. Budweiser presents Holyfield versus Holmes. Friday, June 19th. Live on pay-per-view.
Ándale, ándale, ándale.
Guadalajara, 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 Guadalajara.
Nos vemos en el Pollo Tapatío, amigos.
You gotta make choices.
Hey kid, you wanna fly? You gotta buy. Come on kid, let me hook you up.
Exercise the right choice.
Visit your local park and recreation department today.
Welcome back to Facing the Future with Bill Clinton. There are many people here that still haven't gotten a chance to ask a question. We're almost out of time. So we're going to start a rapid round of questioning now, sort of have some fun with short questions that can be answered with short answers, or even just a yes or no. What's your question for the governor?
If you had to do over again, would you inhale?
Sure, if I could. I tried before.
Governor Clinton, who did you believe, Clarence Thomas or Anita Hill?
Anita Hill.
Do you agree or disagree with warning labels on record albums?
I think for them to do it on a voluntary basis for really young kids is a good thing to do. I don't favor a mandatory labeling, but I think for the industry to do it the way they've done with the movies is a plus. I think the industry should do it the way they've done it with the movies. I don't think it should be mandated.
Do you personally participate in recycling?
Yes.
On an astrological note, what's your sign?
Leo.
What was the first presidential election you participated in, and who did you vote for?
I voted for McGovern in '72. I was old enough to vote for Humphrey, but my absentee ballot didn't come back from the courthouse in time for me to cast it. I would have voted for Humphrey in '68.
What was your first rock and roll experience?
Going nuts over Elvis Presley.
Governor, if Murphy Brown, George Bush, and Ross Perot ran for the presidency, who would you vote for?
I'm not sure.
Governor Clinton, could you please name someone you would like to appoint to the Supreme Court and why?
I think Governor Cuomo would be a good Supreme Court justice. Because he is a legal scholar who also understands the impact of the law on real people's lives.
How long would it take you to balance the budget and get us running in black?
I don't know the answer to that. I think it would be difficult to do in 4 years because we have quadrupled the debt in 12 years. But I'll tell you this, it'll go down every year when I'm there, not up.
Governor Clinton, what was your major in college, and did you play any sports?
I majored in international affairs, which meant I basically had a triple major in history and social studies and economics. And I didn't play any sports in college. Although I love sports, I didn't play any.
Governor, the space program, would you fund the space station? Do you believe in manned space operations?
I do. I think it's an important way of maintaining our technological lead in areas that will benefit us not just in space, but in other areas that will generate jobs for Americans in the future.
Where do you get your news from when you're not running for president? Where do you get your news from? What newspapers do you read? What networks do you watch?
When I'm not running for president, I read the Arkansas newspapers. I read the New York Times every Sunday. I read the Wall Street Journal frequently and the Washington Post weekly edition. And I watch the network news at night.
Who is
and CNN.
Who is a visual artist you admire?
A visual artist? You mean painter?
Past or present, yes.
El Greco.
Do you consider flag burning a legal and valid form of free speech?
I disagree with it, but I don't favor the constitutional amendment.
I saw you on Arsenio. You play excellent saxophone. If you could play in any band, which one would it be?
If I could play in any band, which one would it be? I would play with Kenny G so I could learn something. I got to play with him last week, by the way. It was a real highlight of the whole California primary. It was great.
Do you feel that the two-party system can still work in this country, or do you think that we need the diversity of opinions with the Greens, Libertarians, or other parties?
I think the two-party system, on balance, is better because it gives you more stability and enables decisions to be made. The problem we've got now is that there's paralysis in Washington. Not enough decisions are being made. In multi-party countries, you normally have that problem multiplied many times over. The more parties you have, the harder it is to get people together to make tough decisions.
Governor Clinton, if you're elected president, will you appoint Latinos and other minorities to your cabinet?
Yes, absolutely. I think a president's staff and cabinet ought to look like America. I think it ought to look like America. I think, One reason for the alienation of young people is this is a more diverse society than you can tell by looking on television at night at the people running it.
All right, Governor, we're almost out of time, but we'd like to give Governor Clinton a chance for a final wrap-up before we end the show. Governor?
Thank you. I want to thank all of you for your time today, and I want to thank MTV for giving us this opportunity. I want you to believe in your country again. I want you to believe that you and your generation can make a difference. I want you to believe that your future can be what you make it, not constricted by people who didn't do the right things for you in the political system. I want you to feel the way I did when I was your age, that the future was limitless and that you're part of a community that really cares, where you matter and where you can make a difference. That's why I got into this race for president, to make sure that happens. I want to give you one example of what you can do to make a difference. The motor voter bill is being voted on in the House today, even as we speak. It's already passed the United States Senate. This president says he may veto the bill. I would sign the bill. I think it ought to be easier for young people to register, easier for people to vote, but you still have to vote. Go do it. Go do it.
Well, that wraps it up for MTV's first Choose or Lose Presidential Candidates Forum. We hope to do a couple more of these in the coming months with the other candidates.
But until that time, MTV News will keep the Choose or Lose reports coming. I'd like to thank Catherine Crier for helping out, and thank you, Governor Clinton, for taking the time to be here.
Thank you. Thanks, Tabitha. Thanks, Catherine.
From CNN, I'm Catherine Crier.
And from MTV News, I'm Tabitha Soren. And if you'd like more information on registering to vote, you can write to the address on screen. Good night.
Thanks. One of my favorite institutions. Thank you. I had a tough time answering that. Were you there when they asked you?
MTV thanks all of our cable operators for helping make this event possible.